Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Thursday night Anamkara meditation program. With all my heart, with all my love, I welcome you to our program this evening. I'm so glad you were able to join us and bring your divine self, bring your power of practices, your commitment to practices. It's just great to be in your company. So thank you for joining us this evening. So what we're going to do is take a few moments now to just let our whole mind, body settle. And we've been doing that at the start of the program and making use of the harmonium, just helping to guide and slowing of the deepening of the breath, so that when we're doing on the inhalation and then on the exhalation, inhaling, exhaling, inhaling, exhaling. We can add the sound of mantra if we want. The ancient mantra of I am. As the breath comes in, and then hum silently in the mind as the breath goes out. Awareness of simply being. I am. And letting go and letting go. The whole body invited to soften, warm, let go. Coming home to yourself. And just continue to breathe. Just feeling the flow of the breath. Even as the mind may think or not think, feel or not feel. All the while the breath is coming in and going out. So when we shift a little bit of our attention to the flow of the breath, it empowers us. It empowers us to step back from the mind. It so captures our attention, so captures our identification with the content of mind. So it creates so much turmoil, so much turbulence in the nervous system. We become what we think. That's what Buddha talked about 2,500 years ago. That's what the yogis had talked about for thousands of years before that. As you think, so you become, said Buddha. So watch your thoughts with care and allow them to arise out of compassion for all beings. When the mind starts to really settle, we settle, our awareness settles, comes down, and come into the heart. That boundless spaciousness and presence of being already resides. It's not something we have to create. It's something we become aware of. So much of the practices are aimed at the mind, really all the practices. because it's the only thing that gets in the way of knowing the fullness of the reality that's already present. So the meditative traditions don't talk about, making yourself happy, doing things to be happy. Because that's a kind of happiness that's going to always be ephemeral. It's always going to be contingent on something. Thus, it's always going to have a certain insecurity, certain fear of it leaving. It's going to require something to sustain it, maybe something to defend the conditions that sustain it. We get involved in this whole drama. What the yogis realized thousands of years ago, and it was a real turning point for Buddha. Buddha became the most extreme ascetic. He was like the king of all ascetics back then. So much so that, you see these ancient depictions of what he looked like, and they'd say you could see his backbone and his abdomen. He was so starved. He was such an ascetic. And it was getting him nowhere. He realized he was still suffering. He didn't know what to do. And then suddenly, joy arose. Uncaused. He hadn't done anything, hadn't eaten anything. His body was still emaciated and in pain from that. But joy just arose. But because he was so practiced at looking, this is what sadhana teaches us. Really examine, really deconstruct the moment, deconstruct the mind, deconstruct the connections it automatically makes, because they're often just conditioned mind and lead us astray. So he looked at this, and as he looked at it, he realized it was just arising from being. And he realized then that all these terribly ascetic practices were actually taking him away from where that arose from. That he barely had the strength to do anything, even do practice. He barely had his health. So it was in that moment, awakening to spontaneous joy arising, that he changed his entire direction. Because, a yogi is like a scientist. You make observations and in a controlled environment, and then seeing clearly, you make changes based on what you've seen. So he saw this clearly, made changes in his practices, was shunned by his fellow ascetics. They thought he fell off the path. Oh, look, there goes Buddha. Oh, look, he's having milk. That's horrible. They literally shunned him for eating a little bit, having a little milk. People get attached and identified with anything, a practice of I'm the supreme ascetic. If you don't know either the infinite, who cares? Who cares? That's not what you're aiming for. You're aiming to know what Buddha came to know and then described as the four immeasurables. So when he set aside even his prejudice thinking, you have to deny and punish the body with asceticism, he talked about walking the middle way. Well, there's actually a deeper symbolism to that. The middle way is the Sushumna Nadi. It's the balance point. But he was talking about not too tight, not too loose, not being too much of an ascetic, but not getting involved in the world. So he was saying, no, we've got to walk this middle way. And doing so empowered him to get strong enough to be able to then say, I am going to sit, under the Bodhi tree until I've got it all figured out, until I've gone past all suffering. Having done that, having had that strength of practice, that clarity of mind, because he had conquered the mind, he had conquered the body, He just hadn't come to know the infinite. Not in that incarnation. Coming to know that, that's what he had to pass on. A way to do that. Because what it said is that when he got up after having attained complete nirvana under the Bodhi tree, he got up and lamented that there was no way to give this away. There was nothing he could do. Joseph Campbell writes about this in one of his texts on the hero's journey, about how there comes this point where a being, having gained that attainment, is faced with that quandary of, oh, if it can't be given away, what am I to do? I'm free, but if I can't give it away, what do I do? And that was Buddha's state of mind. And it said that all the great gods came and said, you have to at least try. You have to teach. People need a way to get free of suffering. They need to return to the true essence, this pristine awareness and its immeasurable qualities. So Buddha talked about the 4 immeasurables, the boundless love and compassion, the boundless wisdom, the boundless rapturous joy, and the unshakable equanimity. That when you strip away, when you become the true ascetic, meaning we don't cling to and be attached to all the things of the mind and what the ordinary world wants us to value. When we've renounced that, now we find we're rich beyond measure. The fullness of being, the fullness of love, the fullness of compassion, the equanimity, the rapture, inexpressible. And no, we can't just give it away, but we can keep pointing to the way beyond the way. We keep pointing to the practices that help us get free from the mind. So all the practices are aimed at. Because what's already present is that fullness of your highest nature. What Buddha called, bodhicitta, Buddha mind. But the yogis had already been talking about a satchidananda. Very similar formula for pointing at what these infinite qualities, irreducible qualities of our highest nature are. They called it satchidananda, sat, that which is true at all times, in all places, true being, beingness, eternal in its nature. Chit, consciousness, not some inert state. It's fully conscious. It embraces everything as itself. Ananda, rapturous, loving, joy, embraces all of creation as itself in rapture. So hard for the ordinary mind to even think about this, because the truth is, it's beyond imagining. That's why the yogis were saying, no, you need to experience this for yourself. There was a great Sufi master who wrote, and he said, the paradox is, it can't be found by seeking, yet only seekers find it. Interesting. Seeking is an indicator of ripeness. when we're seeking something other than what the ordinary world has offered us. Because for lifetimes, we were living out the part of the cycle of our evolution where we wanted to be engaged in everything about the world. We cultivated countless desires to pursue them, to explore them. It's the infinite coming to know the finite. We're the expression of that. You're the expression of the infinite wanting to know what it is to be just you. Your absolute perfect perception of your life as it is informs the infinite, what it is to be finite in that nature. But the evolution of our separate existence, illusory existence as separate, evolves over lifetimes. That was called the sovereignty phase of evolution. Sovereignty means with form. It's taking on form. It goes on for eons. Taking on all different kind of forms, exploring it. Until we finally just like, wait a minute. I'm done. I'm done with all these forms. I'm done with all the drama. I'm done with the desires. Desires always lead to, well, momentary satisfaction and then some pain. Yeah, I got that. Across all the different places I've tried that. There must be something. There must be something bigger, better. We intuit that because the essence of that consciousness that lets us know there's something bigger and better is within us all the time. But we were so busy looking for the parts, we didn't get to see the whole. But the seeking, when we start to seek beyond the world, that's almost a feedback loop from our little self to our big self. Say, yeah, this whole process has run its course, matured, ripened. It's time for this fruit. Has attained such sweetness to fall back into the hands of God. That's what we're doing here. And it starts with the simplicity of the breath. Let go of the mind, rest on the breath. Let go and let go, rest on the breath. Watch where that takes you. Let go of this thought, this feeling, this memory, anticipations about tomorrow. Oh, let them all go. The fullness of what's present, here and now. Let that wash over you. Let that wave of the divine wash over you. Because that's what clears our vision. Grace, the waves of the divine that erase the old patterns that set us against others. There are no others. The only way to the divine is through love of all beings and all creation. This is the way. And at this time, in human history, more and more, we need people carrying that vision, that experience. Because there's so many people in such pain and in such fear. They're flailing around, inflicting more and more pain on others through prejudice, through denying people their rights, all these different things. All fear-driven, all ignorance-driven. So we need to be informed of this ourselves and walk it into the world. Walk it into places of power, of influence. But all the while, remaining aware of ourself. Aware that you are the embodiment of the divine. Your breath comes in and goes out. The will of the divine within you. That's what Shakti is. Your heart beats by the will of the divine. So when we talk about the awakening of Shakti, of Kundalini Shakti, we're just talking about that aspect of her that allows us to know the infinite as our own self. But her living power, her grace, well, that's sustaining every moment of your life. So we want that other dimension of direct knowing to receive the grace of that. And that's where, that seeking that we do, that longing that we have, that shift in priorities that happens. What's really important? So that the highest purpose of a human birth, twofold: to know and to serve. To know the divine as our own self and all beings, all creation. And to serve that with love, generosity, enthusiasm. And we're empowered to know it and walk it into the world. Live it into our relationships, our work, everything. Our politics, our economics, all of it. It reflects, these systems reflect the level of consciousness of those running the systems. If we want them to change, we have to enter those systems with greater consciousness. And it's surprising what happens when we do that. I remember, for a couple of years, every Sunday I went into prisons and ran programs for inmates as a volunteer. So, the most, literally the most concrete and steel structures there are. And within that, men who had suffered terribly in their lives and inflicted horrific suffering, even death, could wake up, be transformed. One inmate one time said to me, if the only way for me to have learned about this, the mantra, the meditation practice is what he was talking about, was to have been sent to jail, it was worth it. My life is so different, even in jail, than it has ever been. So think about the ways our minds imprison us, get us caught in our own suffering, inflicting suffering on ourselves and others. We can get free of that. Shift to what is. Because that's born of what isn't. What is? Oh, you are so sublime. You are the divine. You have a heart so full of love, it could drown the world. Please, please, Know that. And then open the floodgates of your heart to this world. So hungry for love, for compassion, for understanding, for truth. So we're going to be chanting for a few minutes now and then sit in silent meditation. We'll be chanting this great mantra, one of the Maha mantras, Om Namah Shivaya. So I bow to the auspicious one, the divine within. And we just rest there. We'll just chant for a few minutes and then sit in the stillness. You can add the mantra to the inhalation and the exhalation. Om Namah Shivaya silently as the breath comes in. Om Namah Shivaya silently as the breath goes out. With the awareness of I am that. I'm that throb of the mantra. I'm the infinite in sound form. That's what the mantra is. The sound form of the infinite, of the divine, of yourself. It's already throbbing within you. We do the practice only because the mind is so gross it can't perceive what's already here. So we bathe it in that vibration and then silently repeat it and repeat it and repeat it so the mind can become clear and subtle once again. Perceive the fullness of what's already here. Come to rest in that. Mata Kali Mahadevi Ki Jai. Om Namah Shivaya. And we end with this prayer. And may all our practices truly benefit everyone. And may all beings know complete freedom from suffering. And namaste. It's from Kali's Bazaar. The knower. Your darkness is secondary. Who is the knower who illumines all darkness? Light is secondary. Who is the knower who illumines even the sun? Mystery is secondary. Who is the knower who penetrates all mysteries? Knowledge is secondary. Who is the knower who is the source of all knowledge? Wisdom is secondary. Who is the knower, the wellspring of wisdom from whom all scriptures have come? Pleasure and suffering are secondary. Who is the knower, the stainless one, untouched by desire and attachment, who looks upon all with love and compassion? Form and emptiness are secondary. Who is the knower in whose clear and boundless light of awareness form and emptiness embrace? Birth and death are secondary. Who is the knower, the one, unborn, undying, eternally pure? O my beloved, tatvam asi, thou art that. That's what we've taken birth to know, to live into this world. So, thank you all for coming this evening and being ones who truly seek to know and to live it into the world. That's what this divine company of satsang is all about. The path through this dark age, it's challenging. So we need each other. We need those who remind us. It's all being supported by the living presence of the divine. We can come to know that and revel in the unfolding of grace in the moment. We can do the practices and discover the ways that the mind is both transformed and contained. Contained, meaning not us. We have a mind. We're not the mind. Know the truth. Tatvam asi, thou art that. So again, thank you all for coming and being ones who carry the light of the truth into your lives and into this world. So, namaste.